Hey guys, welcome to part number 2 of the real reason Washington wants to kill vaping. So in part number 1, I mentioned there is a narrative that the politicians are using in Washington. Now this is not a new narrative, but this is a narrative that has gave them a lot of success in the past, and they think it's going to give them success in the future, and I'm not so sure about that. But this video is going to focus on who these senators actually are. Every single one of these politicians I'm going to name off is a senator, and they are also all the Democratic Party. Now, I don't know why this is a Democratic platform, but it just seems to be. The research that I've done, the research that's been handed to me, I've not seen one Republican that wants to see vaping die, but that could change in the near future because we are getting ready to go into an election year, and there might be some Republicans that defect over to the Democratic side on this issue because who is going to argue with, you got to protect them kids, you got to protect them children. So my research goes back to 2014. It goes to present day, 2017. And I'm going to just start naming off these senators. I have audio clips, I have video clips, and then after the audio clip, I'm going to come back and talk to you guys a little bit more why I disagree with him and show my proof. And then I've got 4 senators coming up all in a row, and I'm going to come back after each one of their little speeches and tell you why I think they're full of shit and why they are out of tune with reality. So the first senator we have is a Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois. And he is a longtime anti-vaping zealot and has fought the tobacco industry for years. Now, I know vaping has nothing to do with tobacco, but every time he says the word tobacco industry, he is talking about the vaping industry because they think it's one and the same. They think that electronic cigarettes and vaping and big tobacco are the same thing. Now, their lines could be kind of blurred, because I'm not trying to make any excuses for them, but their lines might be kind of blurred because Big Tobacco decided to get into the vaping community by putting out their stupid-ass Mark 10s and things like this to try to cash in on the vaping industry while they can, while it's still alive. And then they're doing everything they can to help try to kill it. And so let's just get into it, okay? So Dick Durbin from Illinois, I have an audio clip from him. This is coming from a Senate committee hearing that is going over the marketing strategies of vaping and big tobacco in their eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys see that clip. So here we go right now.
I want to thank the chairman for his kind remarks and also my colleagues, and thank you for your patience. And I'm going to submit my statement for the record and first acknowledge the presence of Matt Myers. Matt and I have been in this struggle for a long time, trying to save and spare kids from tobacco and what it does to them. And we know when addictions start, they start in your adolescence. If you can sell an addictive product to an adolescent, you got them. You may have them for life. And that's why a lot of marketing is done for children. Back in the day, it was just bald-faced marketing, Joe Camel and everything you can imagine. And the kids were wearing T-shirts and hats and sadly becoming addicted to products that would absolutely be the end of their healthy lives if they weren't careful. And now we have this argument by the e-cigarette industry that it's just an accident that all your advertising and marketing is appealing to so many kids. That's a little hard to understand. I think it's hard to believe. Look at the numbers here. E-cigarette use among nation's kids is on the rise. CDC released data last year showing in 1 year, from 2011 to 2012, the percentage of middle and high school students who used e-cigarettes more than doubled. They would have you to believe that just happens, it's an accident. We know better. The same study found that 1 in 5 middle school students who reported using e-cigarettes had never even tried a conventional cigarette. This wasn't about finding a way off of smoking. This suggests for many young people, e-cigarettes was a gateway to nicotine addiction and to smoking. The new study by JAMA goes even further. Middle and high school students who use e-cigarettes more likely to smoke traditional cigarettes, less likely to quit smoking. This didn't come from some liberal think tank. JAMA, pediatrics. According to the 2014 Surgeon General's report, many kids and young adults who are occasional smokers go on to become daily smokers, 2,100 of them every single day. I'm not going to give the whole statement here, but there's one part of it I do want to refer to because it harkens me back to an era, Senator Markey, that you will remember well. It was 30 years ago, if you can recall this time, when those 7 tobacco company executives appeared over in the House of Representatives and took an oath that cigarettes and tobacco were not addictive. Now Lorillard, one of the executives represented Lorillard. Lorillard's back, arguing they don't market to kids. Look at the analysis recently published in the Journal of Pediatrics. Between 2011 and 2013, exposure to e-cigarette marketing by children aged 12 to 17 rose 256%. 24 million kids saw these ads. That's no accident in the world of big business. Lorillard's blue e-cigarette accounted for 80% of this advertising, targeted at 12 to 17 years old. It's the same battle, Mr. Myers. We've been at it before. They want to addict these kids, this time to an e-cigarette, which has a chemical that's addictive. We know what it leads to. Sadly, it leads to tobacco addiction, disease, and death. I don't believe there is a case to be made for e-cigarettes being sold to children. I hope this committee feels the same way.
Okay, guys, so the study that Dick Durbin was talking about there was a study that was published in JAMA. Now, JAMA stands for the Journal of the American Medical Association. And this study was performed by Dr. Glantz. You can spell his name Glantz. And the way he did his study was he took a small group of minors that have vaped before. And he asked them if they've ever vaped, and they said yes. And then basically he asked them if they've ever smoked after they vaped, and they said yes. So basically in his study it was like, well, hell, there's an association right there. Okay, so fast forward to present day. There was a Dr. Lynn Kozlowski, I believe that's how you say her last name. She is from the University of Buffalo. And they've teamed up with the University of Michigan to investigate this study. And the conclusion that she came up with is that this study is total bullshit. It's a red herring. Now, she didn't say that. She didn't say that it was bullshit, but basically she came out and debunked that study because she found that the minors that were used in this study, the sample study group that they used was way, way, way too small. The answers that they were, or the questions they were given were way too vague. And they basically just linked an association with regular use. And she looked at how long that these kids had actually vaped, how many times they've tried it, and how many times they do it on a daily basis. She found that a very, very, very small percentage, and when I say small percentage, I mean less than 1% of these kids went on to be regular vapors. They were asked if they've ever smoked after they vaped, and they said yes. So this Dr. Glantz, in my opinion, interpreted that as it's a gateway. They smoked after they vaped, therefore it's a gateway. It's not true. Okay, so that whole study that he just talked about is a red herring. It's null and void. It's been debunked. Okay, so the second group of senators that I wanted to bring into this was, there is a video that was put out in late of October of 2015. And this video is another Senate committee hearing, and they are calling for basically the head of the vaping community, the vaping industry. They want it dead. And this is gonna be 4 senators. You've got Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon. You have Senator Edward J. Markey from Massachusetts. You have Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut. And you have Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts. All 4 of these people are going to go on a small tirade of their own. They've all teamed up together to put this meeting together, put this hearing together. And so the first person you're going to hear from is Jeff Merkley from Oregon. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for you right now.
I rise today to talk about an issue that affects the health of our children in every single state. And I'm going to ask unanimous consent that after I complete remarks, Senator Blumenthal, Senator Markey, Senator Boxer, and Senator Warren be afforded the opportunity to continue to address the same topic.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I'd also invite my colleagues to jump in if they would like at any point to exchange views as well. So this issue is one that we have known about for a very long period of time, which is that tobacco addiction destroys lives. I grew up in a family where my mother didn't smoke and my father didn't smoke, but they both came from large families, many brothers and sisters, and it seemed like every single year when I was young, one of my aunts or my uncles died from smoking. They died from cancer. They died from heart disease. They died from emphysema. And this carnage was just all too apparent. And anyone who has taken the slightest look at this issue knows that the statistics just are unbelievable. The number of deaths and illnesses caused, the numbers of years lost, the degradation of the quality of life of individuals. For this reason, it had long been a topic here in the Senate that nicotine, the primary acting element in tobacco, should be considered a drug. It is a drug. It has all these impacts. And we have a Food and Drug Administration. The Food and Drug Administration should be able to regulate it for the health and welfare of our nation. And back in 2009, we debated just such a law here on the floor of the Senate and across the way in the House. And that law was adopted. And so we anticipated that in short order, regulations would be issued, and they would help address particularly the effort of tobacco companies to produce new products designed to essentially produce nicotine tobacco addicts among our children, to entice our children into smoking or chewing, this whole variety, this continuum of products. But here we are, years later. It's no longer 2009, it's 2015. 6 years later, and we have no regulation. And during that time, a great deal has happened. Many new products have been introduced in the never-ending quest of the tobacco companies to find what they call replacement smokers. That is, young folks who will continue to buy their products as their current customers die because they use their products. And so 6 years have passed, and no action out of the administration. Year after year, we've pushed, we've called as senators, we've talked about it on the floor, we've held meetings with the key officials, and it's always been, we're almost there. We're working on it. We know how important it is. But while this process has gone along so slowly, millions more of our children have become addicted to tobacco. And one of the main instruments that the tobacco industry is using are flavors designed to target children. We can see here particularly flavors in the e-cigarette category. And we have a whole variety. We have coffee, we have cherry, we have apple, we have cherry bomb flavoring. I was told today on the phone that there's a Captain Kangaroo flavor, there's a Scooby-Doo flavor, there's a gummy bear flavor. Now these flavors are not designed to entice adults into becoming smokers, because the industry knows that very rarely does an individual start to use tobacco products after the age of 21. It is the youth who experiment, and then the nicotine as an addictive drug does its work and turns them into lifetime users. And that is where, of course, the money is. Now, I was asked in an interview today how it is that the tobacco companies say that these products are not targeted at children. And I responded very simply. It's the big lie. No individual can look at the flavors of these products and not know that they're targeting our children. So what has happened in the last few years is the e-cigarette industry is the most successful of the products that the tobacco companies have tested. And in fact, in just the last year alone, use by our high school students has tripled. And that means that we now have 2 million high school, in the the survey was the previous 30 days. In the previous 30 days, 2 million of our high school students had utilized e-cigarettes. So the tobacco campaign is working, which means they are hard at work compromising the health and welfare of our children and leading them down a path to suffering and death. And that's unacceptable. So we are here today, a number of us, to simply say to our own administration, our executive branch, get the regulations done. They have now been forwarded from the Food and Drug Administration, from the FDA, to the group, the Office of Management Budget, that does the final review of those regulations. Get the regulations done and make sure that they are strong regulations. Do not put in a clause that grandfathers all the products and exempts them from regulation that have been produced up till now. Such a grandfather clause would tear the heart out, tear the guts out of the entire effort to regulate these killer products. And certainly regulate the flavors. That is the key core strategy of addicting our children. Do not ignore that key core strategy. So this is something very real that this body here debated and decided to do and turn it over to the executive branch. It is way past time for the executive branch to act. So we are asking for quick and powerful, forceful action to stop the carnage that is ensuing from the failure in these regulations.
Okay, guys, so that was Senator Jeff Merkley from the state of Oregon. Now, when he brought out his little board out there and started showing out all of his e-liquids that he had on there, he pointed out that there was a coffee flavor. What fucking kid is going to want a coffee flavor? That's not a child-appealing flavor at all. I'm 43 years old. I cannot stand the taste of coffee. I don't see little kids out there drinking coffee. I know millions of people love that shit that are both older and younger than me, but I personally can't stand it. I maybe can do a latte or a cappuccino. No kid is going to want a coffee flavor. Just not going to happen. Cherry, apple, he pointed those out on his little board there. Those are very generic flavor profiles. Then he pointed out that he heard on the phone that there was a Captain Kangaroo and a Scooby-Doo flavor. In case you guys may not know, Captain Kangaroo was a kids' variety show back in the day. I don't really know what time of the day it was on because I don't remember it. I'm 43 years old and I vaguely remember ever seeing an episode of Captain Kangaroo. Maybe I'm out of touch, but I haven't seen an episode of Captain Kangaroo on TV in the last 25 or 30 years at least. I can probably count on one hand how many episodes I watched in my life. So to come out and say that there is a Captain Kangaroo flavor and that appeals to children is way out of touch. Scooby-Doo has been around forever, and I don't really recall ever seeing a Scooby-Doo flavor, or for that matter, a Captain Kangaroo flavor. They might have had labels that had Captain Kangaroo on them or had Scooby-Doo on them. That I wouldn't put past the e-liquid companies. But to have a flavor, I've never heard of a flavor called Captain Kangaroo. I've never heard of a flavor called Scooby-Doo. All right, so that goes to show just how far out of touch and out of whack these senators are, out of reality, out of the general public. They have no connection with the general public that I can tell. They have no connection with basic vaping reality that I can tell. All they do is they get up there on their soapbox and they push these narratives down people's throats. Why? Because it sounds good to their colleagues. It sounds good to their peers. It sounds good to the general public that is anti-vape, that is anti-smoke. It appeals to the unknowing general public. So it makes them sound good. This is a tactic they've used for decades upon decades, and it has worked in the past. Anytime they get on the bandwagon of saving them children, it gets them votes. That might not be the case anymore. So, he said that there is no reason to have flavors out there other than to entice children. I'm calling bullshit on that. I have a flavor study right here. This flavor study was published in 2013, 2 years before this video came out. This study was published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. Okay? Now I'm going to be reading off some stuff here, so I'm not going to really be looking at the camera while I'm scrolling through this. But this study here was focused on how effective flavors are for vaping and if it makes vaping more effective or less effective. The study participants that they used were predominantly male. Median age in this study was 40 years old. It was comprised of both current smokers, former smokers, and the total participant pool in this was 4,618 participants. Of those, 4,117 were former smokers. 398 of those were current smokers. So 91.2% and 8.8% respectively. And it was made up of mostly English-speaking Americans. Okay. English-speaking Americans took up 39.4% of the study group. So that's a pretty large chunk out of, this group of people. They got people from all over the world in this thing, but that was the main group. So these people had the option to pick whatever flavors they want, both at the inception of the study and all throughout the study. They just had to disclose what flavors they wanted to go to so the people conducting the study could get their data. When this first started, at inception, 1,984 participants chose tobacco flavors from the jump. As the flavors that they had to choose from were tobacco flavors, mint and menthol flavors, sweets, fruits, nuts, drinks and beverages. Okay? So as this flavor study went on, the numbers dropped way down from people choosing tobacco and going to the other flavors. Why? Because whenever, as we all vapors know, whenever you start vaping and you get off the cigarettes for good, your taste buds come back and everything starts tasting better. So you want to taste other flavors besides just tobacco. Tobacco is one thing that smokers are used to. They've been smoking for decades and years, and so the tobacco flavor is one thing that appeals to them when they first started vaping. I know it did me, probably did it with a whole bunch of you guys out there as well. But as you get your taste back, you want those other flavors. And you're like, hey, there's dessert flavors, there's fruit flavors, there's drink flavors. You want to try those flavors. So that is in line with this study. Reality is in line with this study. So when at the study's conclusion, at the conclusion of this, they asked these people, the participants, they asked them, they said, what do you think about the flavors and are they effective? Here's an excerpt from the conclusion of the study. It says, more than half of the study sample mentioned that they like the variety of flavors and that the taste gets blunt from a long-term use of the same flavor. Now, as we all know, that's vapor tongue, okay? The average score for importance of flavors variability in reducing or quitting smoking was 4 out of 5. So they gave them a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being not important, 5 being most important. The average score on this was 4, very important. Finally, the majority of the participants stated that restricting the variability of flavors would make the electronic cigarette experience less enjoyable, while almost half of them answered that it would increase the craving for tobacco cigarettes and would make reducing or completely substituting smoking less likely. So basically what they're saying is we need flavors, and this study proves that. The flavors are what gives vaping its effectiveness. It keeps us off the cigarettes, okay? Ex-smokers, whenever they quit smoking and they start vaping, they don't want to be reminded of the tobacco flavors anymore whenever they get their taste back. So, Jeff Merkley, you are wrong, sir. Wrong. Flavors are needed in vaping, and I think you know it. And this is one way you're trying to gut the vaping industry. Now, as far as also talking about gutting the vaping industry, this guy talked about everything has to be done very quickly. Well, why? What is the big push? Well, this was 2015. So they were getting ready to go through a presidential election, mind you. There's no guarantee that they would get a Democratic president again like they had in Obama. If they did, then he would be pushing, like these senators are, he would be pushing their agenda, which is ideally what they wanted. Didn't get it, okay? Trump got in. So they got a Republican president now. This is what they were afraid of. They wanted these deeming regulations pushed through and finalized before they got the new president in. This is what I think. This is what I believe. You might say I'm wearing a tinfoil hat or whatever, but as you can see, it's a nice convicted vapes hat. But that is what I believe. That is me looking through between the lines, okay? So next up, we're going to be hearing from a Senator Edward Markey from Massachusetts. And so I'm going to go ahead and play that clip for you right now.
With Halloween just days away, I'd like to share some scary facts about nicotine. Nicotine is the main ingredient in traditional cigarettes and is also found in the new cigarette, the e-cigarette. 4 decades of scientific research have proven the following. First, nicotine is addictive. Second, nicotine affects brain development. Third, nicotine combined with tobacco is responsible for claiming millions of lives. These facts are true. But for years, Big Tobacco willfully, consistently, publicly, and falsely denied them. Those lies were exposed at congressional hearings, and thanks to the tireless efforts of anti-smoking and public health advocates, traditional cigarette smoking has declined from 50% of all adults to 18% of all adults in the United States. How many millions of lives have been saved because of that? But Big Tobacco and the e-cigarette industry are like the undead. Traditional cigarettes are being supplanted by e-cigarettes. Today, e-cigarette sales in the United States alone tops $1 billion. And e-cigarette use is growing as fast as the students who are smoking them. The use of e-cigarettes among middle and high school students has skyrocketed, tripling from 2013 to 2014, accounting for upwards of 13% of all high school students. That's when my father began to smoke 2 packs of Camels a day. My father died from smoking 2 packs of Camels a day. Nearly 2.5 million young Americans currently use e-cigarettes. Why the explosion in youth e-cigarette smoking? It's because Big Tobacco and the e-cigarette industry are marketing their dangerous nicotine delivery product to children and to teens. Big Tobacco would have our young people think that e-cigarettes are a treat, but they are a cruel, cruel trick on those children. The younger a person is, when he or she starts using products containing nicotine, the more difficult it is to quit. And we know from years of research that flavors attract young people. That's why Congress explicitly banned cigarettes with flavors like cherry and bubblegum because of their appeal to young people. So it's very disappointing, but not surprising, that new nicotine delivery products are available in a myriad of flavors, from cotton candy to vanilla cupcake to Coca-Cola. I wonder what this industry is trying to do that got outlawed for the traditional cigarette industry. You don't have to be a detective to figure it out, because over the past decade, we have made great strides in educating children and teens about the dangers of smoking. And now we cannot allow e-cigarettes to snuff out the progress we've made preventing nicotine addiction and its deadly consequences. We need to ban the marketing of e-cigarettes to kids and teens. We need to ban the use of fruit and candy flavored flavorings clearly meant to attract children. We need to ban the online sales of e-cigarettes to keep them out of the hands of children. The dangers of e-cigarettes are clear. Every day we wait is another day young Americans can fall prey to harmful products pushed by the tobacco industry. Last year, at a Commerce Committee hearing, when I asked several e-cigarette company leaders to commit to ceasing the sale of these types of flavored products, a few agreed, but the vast majority have not and will not. And just today, the e-cigarette industry trade group, the Tobacco Vapor Electronic Cigarette Association, threatened the FDA after posting on its website what the association purports is leaked draft industry guidance under the new deeming rule, tweeting, quote, "The FDA needs to know we mean business." The association got it partially right. The e-cigarette industry should be put out of business. My father smoked those 2 packs of Camels. Back then, it was a cool thing to do. For decades, Big Tobacco denied that there was any linkage between smoking and cancer. My father died because of that denial of the tobacco industry and the cooperation of the United States Congress. Today's electronic cigarettes are no better than the Joe Camels of the past, because e-cigarettes, children and teens, are still getting addicted to nicotine and putting their health and futures at grave risk. I urge OMB to give America's youth a real Halloween treat by finalizing the FDA's deeming rule and stopping the sale of these candy-flavored poisons.
Okay, guys, that was Senator Edward Markey from the state of Massachusetts. To quote him, he said the electronic cigarette industry needs to be put out of business. That proves right there they're trying to kill it. That proves right there that they are not just trying to regulate it, they are trying to regulate it to death and for it to die. Okay, so in his little tirade, he started talking about Joe Camel. Now, I remember the Joe Camel campaign. Like I say, I'm 43 years old. I do remember the Joe Camel campaign. Joe Camel was a cartoon camel character that was put out by Camel Cigarettes, that he had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. He had sunglasses on, hat. This thing was everywhere. It was in magazines. It was on shirts. It was on hats. It was every fucking where. Also, Marlboro came out with the Marlboro Mile campaign, and what that was basically you just send in your Marlboro Miles. It was a little proof of purchase on the side of a Marlboro pack, and what you did is you saved up so many of these by smoking all these cigarettes that you could trade it in for pool sticks and hats and shirts and backpacks and all this kind of bullshit. So what they're doing is they're basically blaming vaping for what Big Tobacco did back in the day. They're trying to say that what they're doing with the flavors, what they're doing with the labeling to try and attract children is the same thing that Joe Camel tried to do back in the day. Like I say, these guys are totally out of touch with reality. They know better than this. You cannot tell me that these educated individuals can go up there and spread this shit and actually believe this and think that they are protecting children. Okay, so as I said, these guys do not want to just regulate it. They want the industry dead. I forgot to mention earlier that Senator Merkley was sitting there talking about he didn't want the FDA to grandfather in any products after the predicate date because that would gut the regulations. No, what it would do, Senator Merkley, it would actually make vaping live. It would actually let it thrive and survive. What you guys want to do is kill it. Senator Markey just said the electronic cigarette industry needs to be out of business. And they mean that, okay? Okay, so on to the third senator. Here we have Senator Blumenthal from the state of Connecticut. So I'll go ahead and play his little clip for you here right now.
And I have a poster as well. In the spirit of Halloween, mine uses candy. I doubt that children this Halloween are going to receive some of these products, I hope not, when they go door to door. But people looking at this poster could easily mistake the candy for the candy-flavored cigarillos, or the candy that looks like cigarettes, appears to be tobacco products, or the spit tobacco that is flavored with candy lookalikes. Today the temptation is to have some fun, use some puns, but I come here in sadness and, frankly, in anger. Sadness that every day thousands of people will become addicted to nicotine and suffer from the diseases that tobacco causes, whether it's cancer or smoking-related lung problems, but also tobacco-related problems that can increase the costs as well as the suffering in our nation. We're dealing here with indefensible delays in issuing a rule that is necessary to enforce a law. Let me be clear about what's happening. The Tobacco Control Act was passed 6 years ago. All of us thought that the provisions of that federal law would go into effect to protect Americans against the nicotine addiction that is peddled relentlessly and tirelessly by the tobacco industry. We are 6 years later in an administration that is probably the most pro-public health and anti-tobacco abuse of any in our history. And still, 6 years later, that law is unenforced. And the reason is there are no regulations. And we are 18 months after the FDA released the rule, it's called the deeming rule, necessary to enforce that law. 18 months have passed since the FDA acted, 6 years since the law was passed in this body, and still no protection for Americans. This fight goes back years and years, and I was involved as Attorney General for the state of Connecticut in helping bring a landmark lawsuit. I helped to lead that lawsuit as one of the states that sued the tobacco companies for marketing to children. Back then, this poster might have been used in court, and I appeared in court to say that the tobacco companies, despite their denials, were marketing and pitching to children by using Joe Camel. Today, the playbook is exactly the same. The tactics have changed, but the strategy is the same, of using pitches, wrappings, flavors, targeting children. Not teenagers or college kids, younger children who are persuaded by the model of their older siblings and friends to begin lifetimes of addiction and disease. They may be fooled by the candy flavors and the wrapping and the pitches that are used, but we should not be. The FDA should not be. The Office of Management and Budget should not be fooled. And they should not be waiting to issue this rule. It should be issued now. We've written to them asking that the rule be issued. A number of us wrote a letter to Sean Donovan. I asked the President of the United States very simply to say, no more delay. Do the rule now. There's no excuse for delay. And by the way, Mr. President, time is not on our side. Every year of delay, thousands more children become addicted. And the President of the United States knows the power of that addiction because he is a former smoker. Hopefully it is former, not present. And he knows the power of nicotine because he's worked hard to overcome it. So let's prevent young people from becoming addicted in the first place. Let's save money and save lives. Please, Mr. President of the United States, issue this rule.
Okay, guys, so that was Senator Blumenthal from the state of Connecticut. And as you notice, he had another little board set up. Now, this board was really, really comical to me whenever I saw it. Whenever I saw this for the first time, and as I've been going back and editing this, I have noticed he mixed in tobacco on one side of his board. In the middle, where everybody can see the main focus point, was nothing but candy wrappers. That was actually Skittles wrappers that were up there, okay? And then over to the side, at the very bottom over here in the other corner, was a bottle of Cosmic Fog, of all things. Cosmic Fog is a very, very inferior e-juice, in my opinion. Cosmic Fog can now be found in Walgreens and Walmarts and places like this. The reason they picked that one is because, why? Because it had a cartoonish cloud with sunglasses on it. Is it a coincidence that they picked that picture because they were talking about Joe Camel earlier, and Joe Camel wore a pair of sunglasses as well? I don't know. But I'm just saying that they picked Cosmic Fog out of all of the millions of e-juices out there. They had to pick Cosmic Fog. That was the only e-juice that was on there to tie them in with tobacco and with candy. Okay, so that was what struck me as comical to begin with there. He's another one that says that we got to protect these children from these candy flavors. We're going to make nicotine addicts out of them. We're going to make smokers out of them. They're going to switch from vaping over to smoking. Okay, Senator Blumenthal. Okay, I know you're not going to watch this video, but I want to address you right here, right now. You are all about protecting the children. Okay, as according to your little tirade there. You're all about protecting the kids. Do you know how much money your state spent last year in smoking cessation education programs for youth? Or for smoking cessation education programs, period? Your state spent $0. Zero on smoking prevention, smoking cessation prevention education. $0 out of all the hundreds of millions of dollars that your state brings in. $0 were spent on smoking prevention education. Does that sound like that you're protecting these kids whatsoever? Not in my opinion. In my opinion, that just shows that all this money that you're getting, that your state generates from tobacco taxes, from sin taxes, from what I'm going to talk about in part 3, from that whole settlement, all these hundreds of millions of dollars that you've brought in, that your state has brought in, and you've spent $0 to help educate these children on why smoking is bad. Okay, that is not protecting any kid. You're up there with your other little zealot friends up there, your other little zealot senators up there, and you are trying to kill vaping because you guys are losing money. It all comes down to money. Every bit of this comes down to money. We all know that it comes down to money. Here's the thing, though. The money you're thinking about that they're losing out on may not be the money that they're actually losing out on. And like I say, I'm going to cover that in part 3. Okay, so next we're going to hear from a Senator Elizabeth Warren from the state of Massachusetts. So here's her speech right here.
Smoking produces corporate profits, period. And there's the heart of the problem with e-cigarettes. Long after the science showed that cigarette smoking kills, long after the industry denied and denied, long after millions of people died from smoking-related cancers and heart disease, this country finally got serious about cutting smoking rates. Now, much of our attention has been focused on ways to keep the industry from hooking young people, and it's a good approach. If you don't start, you don't have to quit. For decades now, public health experts have worked to reduce smoking and to keep kids and teens from becoming addicted to cigarettes. Congress passed laws and implemented regulations that restricted access for teens. We increased tobacco taxes. We clamped down on marketing to kids. State and local governments, along with the private sector, limited smoking in public. And those combined efforts worked. Since the late 1990s, the youth smoking rate has been cut by more than 50%. The most recent effort in Congress to address this issue was the passage of the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act of 2009. The late Senator Ted Kennedy fought for years and years and years to give the FDA authority to regulate the manufacture, the distribution, and the marketing of tobacco. And I stand at his desk today to continue this fight because the law was passed, but our federal agencies have still not fully implemented it. And the tobacco industry continues to target young people. The industry profits from getting kids hooked early, so it finds every way it can to undermine all the other work we have done to keep kids from getting hooked on nicotine. Since it's harder now to get kids hooked with cigarettes, the industry has turned to e-cigarettes. 6 years after the tobacco control, the regulations that deem e-cigarettes as tobacco products and make them subject to all of the rules in that bill have still not been finalized. As a result, e-cigs remain virtually unregulated at the federal level. No age limits, no marketing restrictions, nothing but a splotchy patchwork of state and local regulations. Even though most states ban the sale of e-cigarettes to minors, this is not enough to combat the deliberate and well-financed work of the tobacco industry to hook another generation of kids on their products. Now, an investigation last year by House and Senate leaders revealed how the tobacco industry is marketing their products to kids. It found that the industry is following the exact same practices of marketing to kids and teens that addicted a generation to cigarettes decades ago. Tobacco companies market e-cigs with cartoons and Santa Claus. They show popular celebrities and beautiful models using e-cigs. Tobacco companies push e-cigs in flavors designed to appeal to kids. Flavors like Cherry Crush and Chocolate Treat. Tobacco companies provide free samples at concerts and other youth-oriented events. Tobacco companies advertise on television shows and radio programs that attract large audiences of teens and preteens. And to bring it all into the digital age, tobacco companies use all of these tactics online and on social media. The tobacco industry has done all of this before, and it is having the same results. According to the CDC, e-cigarette use by middle schoolers, that's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and high school students tripled in 2014 alone. And new data released yesterday shows that 21.6% of young adults 18 to 24 have used an e-cigarette. For teens, e-cig use is now greater than the use of all other tobacco products. Look, the tobacco industry is up to its old tricks, but we are not going to fall for them again. And after more than 6 years since the passage of the Tobacco Control Act, the federal government is finally on the cusp of regulation to rein in the industry's e-cigarette marketing efforts. Every day that goes by without this regulation, the tobacco industry hooks more kids. We need a strong rule today, and that's why I join my colleagues to urge the Office of Management and Budget to act without delay and to release this important regulation. It is time. No, it is past time to take action, time to push back against the tobacco industry, time to stand up for our family's health.
Okay, guys, so that was Senator Elizabeth Warren from the state of Massachusetts. Now, she came out and started talking about more flavors, okay? Chocolate treat. I've never heard of a chocolate treat flavor in my life, ever. These people have no idea what vaping is about. By them coming up here and talking about these flavors the way they do, they have no idea what flavors do for the vaping community. All they see is flavors, and they're candy flavors, so they have to appeal to children because adults cannot like candy flavors. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm a big fat fucking guy. I love candy, okay? I've had to cut off of it because I'm trying to lose some weight, but, you know, adults like candy too. Adults like drink and beverage flavors too. It's not just kids. We don't lose our sense of taste when we get older, people. We just don't. These senators are so disconnected from reality, it is not even funny. Okay, so they're up here saying we're trying to protect these kids. We don't want them to become nicotine addicts. I don't want them to become nicotine addicts either. I don't want kids to go start vaping. And, you know, I think that there should be regulation out there. Now, there needs to be sensible regulation out there, not these overreaching regulations that the FDA are doing with their deeming regulations, but sensible regulations. She went on there, Elizabeth Warren went up there and said, well, we need to regulate it by making it illegal for kids under the age of 18 to buy them. Okay, lady, the electronics, the vaping industry has always put not for sale to minors, has always put their stuff in vape shops, always put it to where online that you need to be 18 or 21 and abide by your state's laws, smoking laws, by being able to purchase this product legally. Excuse me while I take a drink here. I'm sorry, I'm really parched here. The vaping industry has been very good about self-regulating in that regard. I've also been very good about self-regulating in the regard of putting what's on that label. When's the last time you looked at a pack of cigarettes and saw an ingredients list on it? Never have. But on the side of each one of these juice labels is an ingredients list. Those have been on there forever. Childproof safety caps have been on there forever. That's another self-regulation. The vaping industry has been very good about self-regulating. Now, the question I want to ask these senators is this. You guys are up there talking about you want to protect these kids. If people do like you want them to do, and you kill vaping, and in their mind people will go back to smoking and they'll be able to regenerate their money, that's what they think. I'm going to give you the reality of what would happen, in my opinion, here in just a minute. But what they think is that scenario. If that happens, and these kids' parents start smoking again, and God forbid they start smoking and they get emphysema and lung cancer and COPD and they die from these things, what's going to happen to these kids whenever they have to be put in the state's foster care system because their parents are now dead? What's going to happen to these kids whenever they're in the state's foster care system and they're turned out on the streets when they're 18 and they're homeless, largely uneducated? What would happen to these kids at that point? How is that protecting these kids in your scenario? Now, here's what would happen in reality. You guys kill vaping, okay? Vapors now would then vape up the rest of what they had, and then a black market would emerge. And when the black market emerges, you're going to have people mixing e-juice that is for sale to the general public and the black market, and they're going to be mixing this shit up in their house or in very unsanitary conditions that would probably make Dr. Creamy's look like a clean room, okay, of their old pictures that they had put up when they got exposed. So very poor, unsanitary mixing conditions is what would happen on the e-juice side. On the mod side and the atomizer side, people are going to start making mods out of the cheapest thing they can find, the cheapest materials they can find, things that would make clones look like top-grade mech mods, okay? These would be blowing up in people's face. People would be getting counterfeit batteries because they're, buy them on the black market. Who's gonna bitch and complain? Who would you have to bitch and complain to? You couldn't go to the FDA and say, I bought this on the black market. They would lock you up for that. That's illegal. So they know nobody would complain about it, and there would be reports everywhere of people blowing their face off from faulty batteries and bad mods, and people getting poisoned from unsanitary made juice, and it would be hitting the media right and left. And that's what these senators kind of want. They want that black market so they can get those headlines and be like, see, aha, we were smarter than you. We told you this would happen. So this is what they want. And this is how they're getting it, is by these, by this narrative. Now, I did mention, and I know this video has gone on a long time, but I did mention that there are other senators in place that are on the side of these four or five senators that I have already named. There was a letter that was put out that was authored by a Patty Murray, and she is a senator from the state of Washington. She wrote a letter to the FDA applauding them for their deeming regulations, that they are doing the right thing, that their deeming regulations are strong, and that they need to be strong, and they need to stay strong to regulate the electronic cigarette industry and the vaping industry, and they're doing the right thing, and thank you for that. Kudos and bravo to you. She authored that letter. It was signed by 16 other senators. Okay? Here, right here on this video, are these 16 senators' names. And I'm going to give those to you right now. So here you go. Richard Blumenthal, Connecticut. Elizabeth Warren, Massachusetts. Charles Schumer, New York. Jack Reed, Rhode Island. Barbara Boxer, California. Dick Durbin, Illinois. Al Franken, Minnesota. Patrick Leahy, Vermont. Sheldon Whitehouse, Rhode Island. Tom Udall, New Mexico. Brian Schatz, Hawaii. Jeff Merkley, Oregon. Sherrod Brown, Ohio. Dianne Feinstein, California. Kirsten Gillibrand, New York. Edward Markey, Massachusetts. Okay, guys, so that is the 16 senators, 17 total, including the author, that signed this letter to the FDA applauding them for their deeming regulations for what they thought was right to do. They got their way. The FDA came down and smacked the ass of the vaping industry and made it pretty much impossible for anybody to abide by those regulations. If the FDA was a company, there is no way in hell they could abide by those regulations. So how in the hell do you think that they are going to think that a mom and pop small business vape shop or a small business mod maker or small business juice maker is going to be able to abide by those regulations? They're not, and they know it. This is how they're trying to kill it. Okay, so I'm going to put a tweet up that was put up this year. And this tweet, well, I'll just go ahead and put it up for you right now as I'm talking. So here you go. Here's that tweet right here. Okay, so what this is, it's a tweet that was put out by a local politician in San Francisco. And this was put up right before the San Francisco flavor ban hearings. And if you'll notice right here on this picture, right dead center towards the bottom is a e-liquid called Fruity. It looks like a Jolly Rancher packaging to me. You can't say it's not. I mean, look at the font on that. Look at the packaging on that. It's Jolly Rancher. It's supposed to be a Jolly Rancher flavor, I'm sure. That is made by Ruthless. Okay, a lot of people like Ruthless. They put out juice in the past, but this one right here crosses the line, Fruity. Okay, they've also put out Drip Pops back in the day, and that labeling is gone, but Fruity is still around to this day. Right next to that, over to the right, you're going to see Steep Pop D's right there. See that? Okay. That's the Cracker Jack type right there. Child appealing labeling right there. Over to the, I'm sorry, that was over to the left. Over to the right, looks like a soda can, doesn't it? So if you guys remember back, the Chill e-liquid that was put out by Naked, they put their shit in a soda can. Same thing here. The bottle is inside the soda can. That, I believe, is called Soda Drips, I believe. Down over to the left-hand corner, what is that? Candy King. I know a lot of you guys like the Candy King. This is why these juices are on the blacklist. This is why. This picture right here. And this picture right here kicked off the San Francisco flavor ban. That is appalling. They're still using this narrative. Okay, I've said the 2014, the 2015, now we're at 2017. Still using that narrative because it's effective. It worked in San Francisco. They got the flavor ban in. There's a flavor ban hearings going on in New York, in New Jersey for pending flavor bans. There are pending flavor bans all over the United States now. It all started from California. So, a little something to think about. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end this video. We're going to go on to part number 3. Part number 3, I keep alluding to, that's where that's going to be the money episode. That's going to be the episode of I'm exposing what money they're losing out on and not just tax money. So, tune in for part number 3. So, guys, until next time, vape on a vape safe, and we'll see you guys later. Good night.